Hey everybody, it's Sarah from Creative Ramblings, and I am here on a Friday night to show you how to build, stain, and stencil a wood sign. And so I have a couple here that are just examples of some of my favorites. These are signs that I built just using lumber, brand new lumber from the hardware store, stained and stenciled. They are some of my favorite signs, and they're really easy to make. And I am doing this video today because this post that I wrote about a year ago is by far the most popular post on Creative Ramblings. It is the most read post, so thousands of you read this post every day. So I thought, why not do a video on it to kind of walk you through step by step how to create these wood signs. So if you are watching tonight because you like to stay and craft on a Friday night, then definitely tune in, chime in, ask some questions. Let me know if you have any questions along the way. And if you're watching the replay, then please leave your comments or let me know if I can help you with anything. I want you to be able to make these at home as well. So I'm going to put these aside for a moment and we'll get started. So we are building wood signs tonight. So I like to use new lumber when I build these signs. I know a lot of people use pallet wood. I would prefer to go get new lumber. I know where it's been. I know it's clean. I know there's not any bugs or mold in it, and it's pretty inexpensive. So what I'm starting with here is a 1x4 piece of pine. I think I got a 1x4 by maybe 6 or 8 feet. They're just $1 or $2 to buy these. Just look for a piece of straight wood, and then you're going to cut it down to size. So these are 24-inch planks, and I used my miter saw to cut mine. You can use a circular saw. You could even use a little hand saw to cut these if you don't have a lot of power tools at home. Or certain hardware stores will make cuts for you. I know Home Depot will cut certain boards for you if you do ask them. So you want to cut 4 of these. So it's 1 inch thick this way, 4 inches thick this way, 24 this way. And I have 4 boards cut here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I took a piece of sandpaper and just sanded them down on the edges so that they're nice and smooth. The next thing we want to do is hold this sign together on the back. I'm going to show you the back of this one real quick. On the back of here, we took the 4 boards and we took a piece of wood strip and just screwed it to the back. So what this wood strip is it's really rough, lightweight, inexpensive wood. It's called wood strip. And you can buy it at the hardware store, and this is what holds your sign together on the back. So, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you're getting something out of this here. We're building wood signs tonight, and I'm walking you through a whole tutorial on it, so if you have any questions, let me know. So, I have 2 wood strips here, and I'm going to put them on top of my 1x4 planks. I made sure that I had the good side facing down, because what's up here is going to be the back. Now you can do this a couple different ways. On this sign here, the wood is a little, it's not all even on the top. It's kind of uneven on the top. So you can set your wood up that way, or you can make it all flush on the ends. So I'm going to make mine flush. I'm going to put my 2 strips on it, and then I'm going to start drilling. So to do this, you want to get a drill with a bit on it, and we're going to be drilling right through the strip into the board, and then we're going to be adding screws to the boards. These are 1 1/4 inch screws, and all you want to look for is when you do screw through this that you don't have anything too long that it's coming out the front of your sign. So 1 1/4 inch works really well. So I am going to start drilling. And again, when you drill, make sure you don't go all the way through to the front either. You could do 4 screws on each wood strip, or you can just do 3 or 2. It doesn't need to be perfect. So I have to say, if you are a crafter and you don't own power tools, go get yourself some power tools. This drill is my most used tool that I have. They're not intimidating. They're not difficult to use. This is a Craftsman drill. I use it all the time. This miter saw was a birthday present. I use that all the time. They're not intimidating, and you can do so much more if you have these tools with you. So once the holes are pre-drilled, we're going to take a screw and pop it into the hole. You pre-drill holes because it just makes the screws go in a little bit easier. And then we're going to attach them. So it's only been a couple minutes and our sign is almost together already. This is a really easy thing to do. And if you want to craft for the holidays and make a couple signs, these make really good gifts too. You could do this all in one. You know, get yourself a bunch of wood and do all the cutting and the screwing and put them all together ahead of time. And then when you have that creative spark and you know what you want to paint on your sign, you could do that down the road. But you could take care of all of this in one day. All right, one more. All right, so that is our wood sign. Strips on the back, ready to go on the front. So now we're going to get creative with our sign. And on both of these, put some of these away. On both of these signs here, I use my absolute favorite stain, and there's a link to this in the description. It's a classic gray stain. And on this sign, it's a little bit darker. On this sign, it's a little bit lighter. It's all in how you put the stain on your wood. So we're going to make sure that the top of the wood is free from sawdust. And I'm going to get out my stain and just a sponge brush. You can use a brush, you can use a cloth, but we're just going to start putting it on. Actually, follow my own advice. Make sure you shake your stain first because it settles. So we're going to shake the stain. Now this little can of stain, I bought this last year, and I use it on almost every sign I make. I absolutely love the gray finish. And it's just a tiny little can. It lasts a really long time. So a little bit of stain goes a long way. There we go, much better. So we're just going to start adding stain across. And if you've ever stained anything, a few tips to follow, or if you haven't, a few tips to follow. Always, always, always go with the grain of the wood. And a stain is meant to enhance the wood grain. I'm trying to read your comments here. Hi, everybody. So a stain is meant to enhance the wood grain, not cover it up. So I'm adding quite a bit of stain here. And once I have everything covered, I'm going to wipe off the excess. And then that's going to let the wood grain show through like it does on this sign here. The longer you leave stain on, the darker it'll get. So if I wanted to have a really dark finish, I'd leave it on for about 10 minutes and still wipe off the excess. If you don't wipe off the excess, it just gets all sticky and crusty, and you don't want that. All right, almost done. And I'm going to be going pretty quick on this sign. You can take your time and make sure you get all of these edges covered too. Now I want this to be a very light gray stain, so I'm not going to let the stain sit at all. I'm going to take some paper towel. I put all the stain on. It is soaking into the wood, and I'm going to take a paper towel and go with the grain of the wood and wipe it off. And you can see how it goes from touching it here, a really opaque finish to a light, almost washed look to it. If you like that farmhouse look and you're looking for maybe a barnwood finish, this will give it to you. I gotta hold it up there at the same time. A little bit more. Wiping all the excess stain off of it. So I'd say we are about halfway through building, staining, and painting and stenciling this wood sign. These are really easy to do. Once you do one, you can do lots more. If you've ever been to a sign painting workshop or you've done these at home, you know how addicting these can be. They're really, really fun to make. Okay, so that's our base. So it just, if you look, bare wood, that's the bare wood, and there's the stained look. So it's just got kind of a weathered gray look. Now, ideally, before we start stenciling this, you would want to let it dry. But for tonight's purposes, we're just going to go ahead and do it. It only takes about 20 minutes to really dry. But we are going to move on to the next step here and talk about stencils. So for this sign right here, we used a couple of different stencils. I used a stencil that I made that says "Let It Snow," and then I used some stencils that I purchased that were snowflake stencils, and I layered them to do these. So you can do it if you don't have an electronic cutting machine like a Cricut or a Silhouette, then by all means go to the store. You can get them at Michael's, Joann's, you can even get them at Walmart. Go buy yourself a stencil and make something. You can also head over to Etsy and purchase some stencils there. This one is a favorite of mine. This is there we go. This is a Deco Art stencil, and I actually used it on my outdoor coffee table that I made. It was a very intricate shape. I really liked it, and it wasn't something I wanted to cut on my own. So I'm going to use this as part of our sign tonight. If you have an electronic cutting machine like a Cricut or a Silhouette, you can make your own stencils. So for those of you who have it, this is my absolute favorite tip here. This film, pick it up here. This is called Duralar. It's kind of like a transparency film. If you're old enough to remember overhead projectors, it feels a lot like an overhead projector film. And you can cut it with a Silhouette. So I have a Silhouette. I can cut this with my blade, not like a 9 or a 10, and it cuts it beautifully. You can design whatever you want. It comes in, this is 9 by 12, and it also comes, I think, in an 11 by 14. So you can make good size stencils on it and then cut it out using the settings for stencil material, I think. But so it comes, there's 25 sheets in here, and it comes clear sheets in between like tissue paper. It's kind of hard to see, but they're just clear sheets. So I'm going to use a combination of that dandelion stencil that I just showed you and a stencil that I made. Now I was thinking as I was doing this, I could do a whole video on how to do a stencil, especially one with words. So this stencil or this sign is going to say "Be Still" with some dandelions on the side. So a couple things to note. When you're creating a word stencil, this one right here was really easy to make because there's stencil letters. So there's cutouts in all of the letters here, which makes stenciling really easy. And I'll show you why that's important when we get into the sign making here. So I've got the stained wood and I have a stencil. Now I need to put the stencil on the wood. And there is a trick for this as well. So I could just take this stencil and lay it on here and start painting. But you worry about some of the paint bleeding through the stencil. So you want to use some kind of a temporary adhesive that's going to hold your stencil to the wood without damaging your wood or leaving any residue behind. So you can get stencil adhesive. What I have used and what I use all the time is basting spray. I am not a quilter or a sewer, but it is specifically sold in the fabric stores to use during quilting to help keep things temporarily in place while you're adding stitches to it. Again, a big can, I've had this for a long time. It lasts a long time. You don't need much at all. So I'm going to shake it up really good. And I'm going to spray the back of my stencil. And it gets nice and tacky, but it doesn't leave a residue. A quick tip, if you have an electronic cutting machine, like a Silhouette or a Cricut, and your mat is losing some of its stickiness, clean off your mat and spray this on there. It works amazing, and it's going to make your mat last longer. So now that my stencil's on here, I'm going to push it down a little bit. It's on there good. Now for the words, we're going to write "Be Still," and I did it in 2 pieces here. So the first piece, let's see if you can see it. It's really hard to read because it's clear. This Duralar, if you want to buy some of this Duralar film and make your own stencils, they make it with a matte finish too. So if it's easier to see for you, you can buy the matte finish and it's all the same price. So for the still, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to spray it. Actually makes it easier to see. And then I'm going to position this where I want it. All right, so stencil is in place. And then the other part of the stencil, I'm going to come back because, again, I did this one in a couple different pieces. This says still, the top is going to say be. I'm going to come back and do that when I'm done with this part. All right, so to paint the stencil, I've got some just craft paint here. I like the Deco Art Americana craft paint, white, and then I'm probably going to use some green. If you are a crafter, you know that sometimes you have an idea in your head, and then when you get down to actually do it, it turns out totally different. I'm actually thinking I might do this whole thing just white. So, nothing fancy. I'm just going to put some paint on a paper plate and try not to make a big mess. The key to getting, so besides having that adhesive spray on your stencil to help hold it in, you want to stencil with a sponge brush. These are really inexpensive brushes, and you always want to use an up and down motion. So I'm going to put a little paint on my brush and then dab off the excess and then just go up and down. Really easy motion. You don't want to let your paint puddle. Just go up and down over everything. So the combination of your spray adhesive, a sponge brush, and a little bit of paint is going to go a long way. So if you are joining us halfway through here, we are making a wood sign tonight. And you definitely want to watch the replay when this is over. I walked you through how to build a wood sign out of lumber. Really easy to do for just a few dollars. Go buy some lumber, put this wood sign together. And then I'm sharing some tips on how to stencil a sign. I'm using a combination of a stencil that I purchased from Deco Art and a stencil that I made using my silhouette. And together this is going to be a really cool sign. I don't know about you, but I have these signs all over my house. I think it's a really cool way to just display a thought or a feeling on a sign, something different than a picture hanging up. All right, so my dandelion's almost filled in. And this dandelion, again, I used, if you want to check it out on Creative Ramblings, you can find a coffee table that I built for my deck. And this dandelion is on that table. And that was a piece that's built out of 2x4s and 1x4s. It's a really cool piece. All right, so our dandelions are filled in. Easy enough. Now, I'm going to come over, and while it's stuck here, I'm going to do my words. So this is going to say, they don't slip, they're stuck on there. I'm like peeking, I'm trying to read your comments, and they're so small. So hi, everybody. Okay, so now we're going to do the words here. Remember, up and down motion, don't go side to side, or it will sneak under your letters. But if it does leak under, like one of mine right there, when we're done here, I'm going to show you a couple tricks for fixing that and making your lines look crisp. But we're going to avoid it as much as possible here. Okay. And you don't use a lot of paint when you do this, which is really nice. A big jar of paint like this can last a really long time. My white's almost gone because I use white on everything. Now, while I'm doing this, you can look at this Let It Snow sign here. This is one I did last year. And there are, let's see, not that you want to think about snow right now, but this was a layered stencil that we did here. So I took a white snowflake and I cut it out and painted it white. And then while it was still wet, I did another snowflake in the middle and did that blue. And then added a little glitter to the top of it. So that was a really fun one to make. I won't be bringing it out just yet. It's not quite snowing here yet. Okay, almost time to see how our lines did. Okay, so now we have our first two stencils done. I'm going to turn this around. We're going to pull it off together and see how we did here. So I've got my dandelion there. It's kind of, there's a glare coming off of it. It's a real light dandelion shape with kind of my pieces going everywhere. And then, got this here. And these stencils, they clean up really well. So when I'm done here, I'm just gonna go take them to the sink and wash them off, and they're gonna wash up just fine. Even the Duralar, if you're making your own, those clean up really well too. So I've got this. There is a little bit of, so I got a little bit on top of my L here. Since the paint is still wet, I literally can just wipe it off and it's gonna come right off. If you wait till it dries, you can actually scrape some of that off too. Now I'm gonna show you something, another tip here, about getting the paint over everything. I said earlier that it's important to, when you're making a sign, to have letters with lines cut in them, because then your stencil is what your word stencil is one piece. So when I wrote still over here, it was all one piece that was cut out together. If you don't do this, let me show you what you end up with. And this is one of those tips that I got when I first got my silhouette, and it was so incredibly helpful. Okay. These are clear, guys. They're really hard to see. I'm having a hard time getting all my pieces. Okay, so I cut out the word B, right? B-E, but I don't, let's see if you can see it here. I don't have lines in my letters, so you don't have insides of the B. Can you see that? So in your silhouette, you can go in and there's ways to, you can either use a stencil font or there's ways to kind of slice into it, which now, the more that I'm saying this, I may just do a video on this. So as far as buying the stencils, the dandelion one I did buy. These I made, these words here that I'm showing, I cut these using my silhouette and this Duralar film. So if you have a silhouette or a Cricut, you can cut these. You can buy the Duralar film. It's like overhead projector transparency film, that kind of material, and you can make whatever you want a stencil. Or head over to Michael's or Joann's or even Walmart or Etsy and find some stencils and just buy them that way. They're all reusable. So, okay, so I have my B right here, B-E, but I don't have a middle. I saved my middles though, and with the magic of adhesive spray, we're gonna be able to do this sign still. So, I'm gonna spray this, and I'm gonna position it where I need it. I gotta turn it around this way. I'll make sure that we're straight. Okay, so I positioned that, and then I can take my other pieces and stick those on too. So that I'm still getting actual letters here. Now, I'm telling you, because this is a clear material, it's kind of hard to see. There's my other piece. All right. So then I'm going to go through and do the same thing with this. And I actually think I am going to use some green. Just because it's fun, I'm going to mix this green, it's actually called sour apple, with a little bit of white that I have left. And make kind of a minty green color, because that looks like it would be really pretty. All right, so I'm going to finish up stenciling this sign using this minty green color we created. So if you are making your own stencils, definitely look for a stencil font so you don't have to do this trick with the insides of the letters. You can search for those on, I like a site called dafont.com, so you can make your own. If you choose to make signs and sell them for any reason, make sure you're looking at the licensing of your font, so it's a font you can actually use on a sign and then sell. A lot of these signs I just make for myself. I don't really sell my signs, so then I can use all of the personal fonts that are on there, and it really opens up your options. Okay, so then I'm going to take off my B. A craft tweezers is a really good thing to have in your craft room to pull these off. So I just used my fingers and kind of made a mess. So, but because the paint is wet, I can still pull some of it off. All right, so I think we might be done here. Let's take a look. So the dandelion is not showing up very well. It looks really cool in person. It's some dandelions that come up here, and then there's little pieces flying off of them. And we wrote "Be Still" on it. Now I have to give credit to Sense of Style. If you've ever purchased clothes from them, they're an online retailer. And I just bought a shirt that says "Be Still" on it that looks very similar to this. It's one of my favorites. I have another one that says "Be the Good," and I think there's one, there's a "Be True" that I have coming in the mail this week. But it's just a really nice sign. So what we did, let's recap real quick. We used 1x4s. I'm going to show you the back of this sign. We used 1x4s and we screwed them together with wood strips. Made sure the sides were sanded down really good. We stained it with Minwax Classic Gray wood stain and wiped off the excess so we have this beautiful wood grain that shows through. Ideally, you want to let that dry for like an hour or two, and then we can come in and stencil. We didn't let it dry, but there's so very little stain on here, it's really hard to, it's not mattering too much. If you don't have an electronic cutting machine, you can go out and buy a stencil. I would recommend getting an electronic cutting machine. I am partial to a silhouette myself. I have a Cameo. Everything in my Etsy shop is cut with my Cameo, and most of the products I do on the blog are cut. Even simple cuts, it's just so much easier than going at it with the scissors. You can cut it with your silhouette. So there are some links in the comments here to the things I use. Specifically this Duralar paper. If you want to try cutting your own stencils, go get some of this. I think it's like $10 for 25 sheets. But again, these stencils are reusable. So I do teach some classes on sign painting, and I'm able to reuse my stencils from class to class and person to person. Just go wipe the paint off of these before they dry. So I think that's it, guys. Thank you for crafting with me on a Friday night and painting signs. We did this in, I don't know how long we've been on, maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes. It doesn't take long at all. And once you get the hang of this, you can make a ton of these. And it's still August, which means you can make these for holiday gifts too, and people would love them. So I think we're going to go offline for now. If you have any questions, comments on here, you can head over to Creative Ramblings and check out this full post. Or just let me know if you have any questions. I hope I taught you something tonight. You guys have a great weekend. Bye.